Ever feel like you're living in some kind of crazy spy movie? Well, get ready, because today we're going deep on a plot to assassinate a U.S. presidential candidate back during the 2020 election.
And this wasn't just some some fringe theory. This was serious stuff that U.S. law enforcement was really worried about.
Yeah, this was the real deal.
Real deal. It's wild, right? We're talking about Donald Trump.
Wow.
Reports, from Axios in this book that's coming out, they're saying that there was intel about Iranian agents. Like, think about it. They were right here in the U.S.,
Right here.
armed with surface-to-air missiles,
Oh my gosh.
targeting Trump during his campaign. Crazy.
Chilling. Just chilling to think about all the planning, all the steps to pull something like that off. What would have happened? I mean, if something like that had actually worked, what would it have done to the election? To the whole country?
I mean, can you imagine the chaos, the fear? Everything would just gone nuts. Things were already so tense back then politically. This could have just totally blown up the election. I mean, even a constitutional crisis. Who knows? It's scary to even think about. It's a good thing it didn't happen.
A very good thing. The sources we're looking at, they talk about how Trump was, understandably, under a ton of pressure. They say he was so worried about this that he started using 2 planes.
Yeah.
Often he'd send his staff on that famous Trump one, the one everyone knows,
Right.
but he'd be flying on a totally different plane,
Yeah.
a much lower profile aircraft.
Smart. I mean, decoy planes, decoy motorcades, it just shows you how seriously they were taking this threat and all the steps they had to take to keep him safe. Remember that time during the campaign when Trump was seen getting off a plane, a white one, but it wasn't his usual Trump one?
I do, yeah.
Well, now we know why, right? It all makes sense.
It really does. There's also this other angle that makes this whole thing even more interesting.
Okay, yeah.
The book, it mostly blames Iran for this plot, which makes sense. But the sources also kind of hinted a connection to China.
Mm.
What do you make of that?
Well, the intel suggests that the missiles themselves, they were shipped from Greece on a ship that had ties to China.
Interesting.
So it makes you wonder, what was China's role in all of this? Were they just supplying the weapons, or was there something more going on behind the scenes? I don't know if we'll ever know the full story there.
It's a mystery.
Yeah.
It really makes you think, though, about all these secret battles going on behind the scenes to protect people in power. Do you think there were other threats during that campaign that we'll just never hear about?
I wouldn't be surprised. It really highlights how important these intelligence agencies are, keeping things stable, preventing chaos, all that. They do their work in the shadows. But it's crucial work. And this whole thing just reminds us how real those dangers are every single day.
Absolutely.
So, like we promised, let's dig a little deeper into where this whole assassination plot story comes from. We've been talking about these reports from Axios, right? And a new book that's about to drop. They both give us this crazy glimpse into what went down.
Yeah, the Axios article is super interesting. It's all based on exclusive info from this upcoming book.
Yeah.
The book really goes deep into the security threats Trump had to deal with
Oh, yeah.
during his presidency, even back when he was campaigning.
It doesn't pull any punches. It says that U.S. law enforcement, like the FBI and all of them, they were really worried about an attack, specifically from Iranian agents. They thought these guys had gotten into the country
Whoa!
and that they had some serious firepower, like surface-to-air missiles even.
It's kind of mind-blowing,
Yeah.
to think about how much planning and coordination something like that would take. It really shows you just how far some people are willing to go to mess with global politics.
It really does.
Huh.
And the book gets into all the crazy stuff the security team did to protect Trump from these threats. 2 planes, fake motorcades, they even ramped up security at airports. It's clear they thought this was a real and present danger.
I remember reading about one incident and it really stuck with me. They detected a drone. It was tracking Trump's motorcade.
Oh, wow.
And a security officer, get this, he used an electromagnetic gun to take it down.
What? No way.
Yeah, it sounded like something right out of a sci-fi movie.
That's insane. It's amazing though, right? It shows you the high-tech world of presidential security. We always think bodyguards, armored cars, but the threats are changing all the time, so the protection has to keep up. Just to clarify though, an electromagnetic gun, sometimes they call it a railgun, it uses these powerful magnets to shoot projectiles super fast. It's pretty new tech,
Right.
but it could totally change defense systems.
Yeah. The source material also mentions like the mental toll, all this.
Yeah.
Just imagine living under that kind of constant threat. The stress, the paranoia, knowing someone might be trying to kill you.
Oh, absolutely. The book talks about a climate of like super high security. Every move was watched, scrutinized, looking for danger. It's a heavy reminder of the sacrifices and risks that come with being in power.
It's true. And it makes you wonder, how do people see these campaigns? We see the speeches, the rallies, but we don't see all the drama and danger behind the scenes.
Right, it's like two different worlds.
Right.
And that gap between what the public sees and what's really going on, it raises some big questions
Mm.
about transparency, about the flow of information. How much should people know about these threats? Would it cause panic, make things unstable if we knew too much?
It's a tough question. Like, how much secrecy can we accept? In the name of national security, I mean, how do you balance security with transparency and the public's right to know?
It's a tricky one. On one hand, people have a right to know about threats to their leaders and what's being done to protect them. But on the other hand, if you say too much, you could mess up security operations. You could put people in danger.
Right. We should remember the info we're talking about here. It's coming from a specific viewpoint. The author, he's got a background in security and intelligence. And the book, it seems to be focused on how effective the Trump administration's security was.
Yeah, that's important to keep in mind. You got to think about who's giving you the info and if they might be biased. The book is interesting, but you got to be critical. Think for yourself.
For sure. We've gone deep here into presidential security, espionage, all these hidden forces in global politics. It shows you the world's a lot more complex and dangerous than we often think.
Definitely. And like we've seen, there's always more to the story than you see at first. Stay tuned for the last part of this deep dive. We're going to explore what this whole assassination plot means and what it tells us about the challenges facing leaders in our world, which is just getting more and more complicated.
So we've uncovered this crazy plot, we've peeked into the shadowy world of presidential security, and wrestled with some really tough questions about transparency and power. What does it all mean for us? What's the big takeaway from this deep dive?
I think it's a wake-up call. It shows us that even in the US, in a democracy, there are these forces working behind the scenes, stuff that's happening outside of public view with really serious consequences. We might see presidential campaigns as this big show of democracy in action, but this whole thing reveals a much darker side, a world of threats, of constant vigilance, stuff most people never even think about.
And the fact that they actually stopped this plot, it shows you just how good these intelligence agencies are. But like we talked about, they work in secret. It makes you wonder, how can we be sure they're doing the right thing if we don't even know what they're doing?
Exactly. That's why this whole thing really highlights the importance of oversight and transparency. We need strong systems to make sure intelligence gathering is legal, that there are checks and balances, so no one abuses their power. It's tough, though, right? Balancing national security with our freedoms.
It's a tough balance for sure. It also reminds us that we can't just assume we'll always have these freedoms. The fact that they stopped this plot, it shows how dedicated the people working behind the scenes are, protecting our democracy. I mean, there are people out there every day working to keep us safe, and they don't get any credit for it.
It's true. This deep dive has taken us into the heart of power, the intrigue, the unseen forces that shape our world. And honestly, we end up with more questions than answers. But I think that's how exploration works. The more you learn, the more you realize you don't know.
That's what makes it so interesting, though, right? Trying to understand the world around us. It's a journey that never really ends. And sometimes the most important discoveries are the ones that challenge what we thought we knew, the ones that make us face some uncomfortable truths.
Yeah, I think this deep dive has done that. It's pushed us to think critically about power, about the role of intelligence, about how fragile democracy can be. We've seen that the world can be a dangerous place, but there are people working hard to protect us from those dangers, even if we don't see them.
What we've learned here today is pretty unsettling. Even in a democracy, so much happens in secret. So it makes you think, how can we as citizens make sure there's transparency and accountability in these shadowy parts of the world? What can we do to protect our democracy, to make sure power is balanced? That's something we all need to think about, especially as the world gets more and more complicated.